The young beauty, named Clara, lived a life that many could only dream of, yet her heart was weighed down by the struggles that often come with wealth and beauty. Born into a modest family, Clara had always dreamed of something more. She had aspirations to help others, to make a difference, but her circumstances seemed to hold her back. Though she had the looks and charm that could make anyone's head turn, Clara had a deep longing for something real, something that couldn't be bought. Then, one fateful evening, Clara's life took a turn that would shock everyone around her. She met Lawrence, an older billionaire who had built his fortune from the ground up. Now, in the final years of his life, Lawrence was facing a terminal illness that was slowly taking its toll on his health. Despite all his wealth, he felt an emptiness that his money couldn't fill. His luxurious mansion, filled with treasures and riches, seemed cold and empty to him now. There was no family, no friends, and no one who truly cared about him for who he was, only for his wealth. This left him isolated, wondering if his vast empire would crumble to dust after his passing. Their meeting was unplanned, a chance encounter at a charity event that Lawrence had attended, hoping to feel some connection to the world outside of his own loneliness. Clara, though out of place in such a grand setting, had volunteered for the evening, hoping to make a difference for those less fortunate. Lawrence noticed her immediately. There was something about her warmth, her kindness, that made him feel like he could be seen again, not just as a billionaire, but as a person. Clara, on the other hand, was struck by his gentleness, despite the power he held. In a world full of pretenses, Lawrence seemed different. Weeks passed after that evening, but Clara couldn't shake the memory of their brief conversation. Lawrence had seemed genuine, and she couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for him. He was wealthy, yes, but the loneliness in his eyes made it clear that his riches had failed him. He reached out to Clara through a personal message, and they began to talk regularly. Their conversations became deep, filled with shared thoughts about life, dreams, and fears. Lawrence shared his regret of never having a true family, and Clara spoke of her dreams of making a meaningful impact on the world. Slowly, an unusual bond began to form between them. One evening, Lawrence made an unexpected proposal. He suggested marriage. His words were blunt but full of sincerity. He admitted that he had no time left and wanted to leave his fortune to someone who would appreciate it, someone who could carry on his legacy. Clara was taken aback. How could she, a young woman with her own life to live, marry a man who was already so close to the end? She hesitated, unsure of what to say. But as she looked at Lawrence, she saw not just a billionaire, but a man who had no one else in the world. She didn't know what to make of the proposal, but something inside her stirred. Maybe this was her chance to make a real difference. Her mind raced. Was this truly a proposal for love? Or was it just a wealthy man desperate for companionship in his final days? Clara's heart was torn, but she couldn't ignore the connection that had developed between them. She had always wanted to make a difference, to help someone who needed it. Perhaps this was her chance to do just that. But then, there was the outside world. Her friends, her family. Everyone would have their opinions. They would call her foolish, accuse her of seeking money and power. Clara knew she would face judgment from all sides. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was something more than just an arrangement. It wasn't just about wealth. It was about connection, something that Lawrence had been longing for his entire life. With a deep breath, Clara agreed. This unexpected marriage was about to change her life forever. What started as a proposal made out of loneliness and desperation was becoming something far more complicated and meaningful than anyone could have ever imagined. The announcement of Clara's engagement to Lawrence sent shockwaves through their social circles. People couldn't believe it. How could such a young, beautiful woman marry a man much older than her, and one who was nearing the end of his life? The public couldn't stop whispering. Was Clara really in love with Lawrence, or was this just a calculated move to secure her future? Everyone seemed to have an opinion, but no one knew the full story. Clara, still in her early 20s, had always dreamed of a life filled with purpose. Yet, she found herself thrust into a whirlwind of judgment and speculation. Friends and family were perplexed. They couldn't understand why she would marry someone so much older, someone who had already lived a full life, while she was just beginning hers. Her parents, though supportive of her decisions, were concerned. They feared that she was being taken advantage of, and the world would see her as nothing more than a gold digger. Clara couldn't ignore their concerns, but deep down, she knew this marriage wasn't just about money. She was beginning to realize that she had feelings for Lawrence that went beyond sympathy. She admired his wisdom, his generosity, and his vulnerability. But even as Clara tried to embrace her growing feelings for Lawrence, the harsh whispers of the world outside couldn't be ignored. Her friends questioned her decision, some even accusing her of being naive. They warned her that she would be seen as nothing more than a young woman chasing wealth, and once Lawrence passed away, she would be left alone, with a tarnished reputation. Clara tried to explain that her decision was more than just about money, but the doubts lingered in her mind, like an unsettling cloud. Lawrence, on the other hand, seemed more at peace with the decision than anyone could have expected. He had spent years surrounded by people who were only interested in his wealth, and Clara's genuine care had brought him comfort in a way he hadn't known in years. She wasn't interested in his fortune. She was interested in him. At first, he had proposed because of his need for someone to carry on his legacy, but over time, he had grown to admire Clara's kindness and determination. He saw her not just as a young woman, but as someone with the heart to do more than just inherit his wealth. As the days passed, Clara's feelings for Lawrence deepened. She began to see the man behind the empire, the one who had built everything from scratch, but who now only wanted someone to share his final days with. The media continued to scrutinize them, painting their relationship in the harshest light, but Clara remained resolute. She wasn't going to let the world dictate her happiness. The wedding planning was a whirlwind. Clara wasn't concerned with extravagance. She just wanted the ceremony to reflect their true feelings for each other. Lawrence, despite his failing health, was determined to make it as special as possible. He had spent a lifetime building wealth, but he realized that in the end, it wasn't the money that mattered. It was the connection, the love that he was beginning to find with Clara. As the day of the wedding approached, Clara found herself torn between the expectations of the world and the quiet, genuine affection she had developed for Lawrence. Could their marriage be real, despite the circumstances? Could it be more than just a financial arrangement? Clara knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to face whatever came, because in her heart, she believed this marriage was about something more profound than anyone could understand. The wedding day arrived, and it was nothing like anyone had expected. Clara, in her beautiful white dress, stood at the front of the grand hall, her heart pounding. The room was filled with people who had only ever seen her as a young woman with a questionable choice in a husband. They whispered among themselves, judging her every move, their eyes never leaving her. Lawrence, in his tailored suit, looked much frailer than he had on their first meeting. His once vibrant energy seemed dimmed by his illness, but his eyes sparkled as they met Clara's. For all the whispers and doubts from the outside world, in this moment, it felt like there was no one else in the world but the two of them. Despite everything, they were here, standing together, united in a commitment no one fully understood. As the ceremony began, Clara's nerves started to ease. She held Lawrence's hand, feeling the warmth of his touch. His smile, though weak, reassured her. He seemed at peace, as if this was the moment he had been waiting for, a moment where everything made sense. The world outside their bubble may have been filled with questions and judgment, but inside this room, they found comfort in each other. The vows they exchanged were simple, but they felt more meaningful than anything else they could have said. Lawrence spoke of his gratitude for Clara's love and the happiness she had brought him in his final days. He spoke about how, despite his riches, he had never known true companionship until he met her. Clara, with tears in her eyes, promised to stand by him, no matter what the future held. She wasn't marrying him for his wealth, but because he had shown her a different side of life, one filled with compassion and kindness that went beyond material things. After the ceremony, the reception was a quiet affair compared to the grand celebrations most people would expect from a billionaire's wedding. Clara had insisted on keeping things simple, focusing on the moments that mattered most. The lavish displays and extravagant decorations were kept to a minimum. Instead, it was filled with laughter, good food, and genuine connections, not the flashy show of wealth that most guests anticipated. The whispers didn't stop, of course. As Clara and Lawrence danced together for the first time as a married couple, some guests couldn't help but glance at the two of them. They wondered what kind of future could lie ahead for them. A young woman and an older man with only a few years left to live. But Clara didn't pay them any attention. She was focused on Lawrence, on the man who had shown her a side of life she hadn't known existed, one where love and connection mattered more than anything else. As the night wore on, Clara and Lawrence shared a quiet moment away from the crowd. They stood on the balcony, looking out at the city below. The lights twinkled, and for a moment, it felt like the whole world had faded away, leaving just the two of them in their own little world. Lawrence leaned in and whispered, "Thank you for giving me this moment, Clara. I didn't expect it, but I'll always be grateful." Clara smiled softly, squeezing his hand. "You don't have to thank me. I'm here because I want to be. I'm here because I see you, not your wealth, but the person you are." In that moment, it was clear that their marriage, despite the odds and the judgments, was real. It wasn't about money or status. It was about the bond they had formed. It was about understanding, about seeing each other for who they truly were. And no matter what the future held, they knew they would face it together, side by side. The night ended quietly, with Clara and Lawrence retreating to their private suite, surrounded by the peace they had found in each other. The outside world could continue to question their choices, but inside their hearts, they knew they had made the right decision. Their journey together had just begun, and whatever challenges lay ahead, they were ready to face them as a united couple. This version of Part 3 expands on the emotions of the characters, their relationship, and the wedding day, keeping the narrative engaging and positive. As the days passed after their wedding, Lawrence's health continued to worsen. Clara spent every moment she could by his side, doing everything she could to make him comfortable. It wasn't just because of her vows. It was because she genuinely cared for him. His once strong and energetic body had grown weak, and the illness that had once seemed manageable was now taking its toll. But despite his declining health, Lawrence still had moments of clarity, moments where he smiled, and moments where his eyes sparkled, as if he were still the man who had conquered the world with his empire. Clara tried to remain strong, but there were times when she would quietly step away to wipe away a tear. The reality of what was happening hit her harder than she expected. Lawrence wasn't just a man she had married for companionship. He was someone who had shown her a new way to see life. He had brought love and understanding into her world, something she never thought she would experience in a marriage that had started out so unconventional. The couple spent their time together in the quiet of their grand home. Lawrence would often tell Clara stories of his past, about the challenges he faced when he was building his fortune, about the mistakes he made, and about the few people who had stayed by his side through it all. Clara would listen attentively, fascinated by his life and the wisdom he had accumulated. There was so much to learn from him, and she cherished every moment of their time together. Clara also made sure Lawrence was always surrounded by the things he loved, his favorite books, the beautiful music he enjoyed, and the soft, warm blankets that had been with him for years. She would read to him at night, even if he could barely keep his eyes open. It was their little routine, and it gave him a sense of peace, knowing that someone was there for him when he needed it most. However, it wasn't always easy. The outside world continued to judge them. The media, always hungry for a story, painted Clara as someone who had married for money, and Lawrence as a fool for falling for her charm. But Clara didn't mind the gossip. She knew what was real. What she and Lawrence had was real. And that was all that mattered to her. But there were days when the weight of the situation was too much to bear. Clara would find herself standing at the window, staring out at the city lights, wondering what would happen when Lawrence was gone. What would life be like for her after everything? Would she be judged forever for marrying him? She had never imagined that she would be in a situation like this, where love, wealth, and life seemed to intertwine in such unexpected ways. Still, there was no denying the bond they shared. It was a bond that was slowly transforming Clara. She wasn't just the young woman who had married a billionaire. She was becoming a woman who understood what really mattered in life. She had learned that love was about more than just appearances or wealth. It was about caring for someone, being there for them in their darkest moments, and sharing in their joy and sorrow. Lawrence had given her that lesson, and she would carry it with her for the rest of her life. As Lawrence's condition worsened, Clara knew that their time together was limited, but she didn't want to waste a single moment. Every day became precious, every touch, every smile, and every word between them. Even though their days were numbered, Clara found comfort in knowing that, in these final moments, they had something that many people never experience: a genuine connection built on love, care, and understanding. This version of Part 4 highlights the emotional journey Clara and Lawrence go through during Lawrence's declining health. It focuses on their growing bond, Clara's internal struggles, and the way they find solace in each other, keeping the story both engaging and emotionally touching. One evening, as Clara was sorting through some old papers Lawrence had kept in his study, she came across something unexpected: a letter tucked in the back of a drawer, its edges worn and yellowed with age. At first, she thought it was just another old document from his past, but as she unfolded it, she realized it was a letter written by Lawrence himself. It was addressed to someone she didn't know, someone she had never heard of before. The letter was filled with personal thoughts, things that Lawrence had never shared with her. He spoke of regret, love, and a decision he had made many years ago, something that had always weighed heavily on his heart. Clara's curiosity got the better of her, and she read every word carefully, piecing together parts of Lawrence's life she had never known. As she read, Clara discovered something that changed everything. Lawrence had made a secret promise years ago, a promise that had shaped the way he lived his life, and perhaps even the way he viewed his marriage to her. The letter revealed that Lawrence had never intended to marry anyone but someone from his past, someone he had been deeply in love with. But for reasons that were never clear in the letter, that love had been lost, and Lawrence had closed himself off from anyone else. Clara was stunned. She had always known that Lawrence had a history, but this letter made her realize just how much he had buried, how many emotions he had locked away. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't just his wife, but also the person who had helped him finally begin to let go of those old wounds. She hadn't realized how much of his heart had still been held by the past until now. Her emotions were mixed. Part of her felt sadness for Lawrence, knowing the pain he had carried for so long. But part of her also felt a sense of responsibility. She had promised to be there for him, to love him in his final days. But now, this new discovery made her wonder if she could truly live up to that promise. Could she give him what he had always wanted: peace, closure, and a sense of resolution before he passed? That night, Clara sat by Lawrence's side, her thoughts racing. She didn't know how to bring up what she had discovered. She didn't want to upset him, but at the same time, she felt like he deserved to know that she now understood more about his past. She knew that he had never fully let go of the woman he had loved before her. The next day, after breakfast, Clara finally decided to speak with him. She sat beside Lawrence in his favorite chair, and after a long moment of silence, she gently told him what she had found: the letter, the secrets it held, and the emotions she now understood. Lawrence listened carefully, his face remaining calm, but Clara could see the emotions stirring in his eyes. He had known that one day his past might catch up with him, but he had never imagined that it would come to light like this. He didn't speak for a long while, as if gathering his thoughts. Finally, he took Clara's hand and smiled softly. "I never wanted to burden you with my past," he said quietly. "I thought it was better left forgotten, but you've given me something I never expected. A chance to finally let it go." Clara's heart swelled with emotion. In that moment, she realized how much her presence in his life had truly meant to him. She had been the person who helped him face the parts of himself that he had kept hidden, and now he was letting go of those old regrets. It wasn't just about the wealth or the empire anymore. It was about healing, about finding peace in the present. And Clara understood now that, no matter what had happened in the past, Lawrence had chosen her. She wasn't just the woman he had married out of necessity. She was the woman he had chosen to spend his final days with, the woman who had helped him find the peace he had longed for. As the days passed, Clara and Lawrence's bond deepened. She no longer felt like she was just his caretaker. She felt like his partner, someone who had helped him overcome his deepest fears and regrets. And while there were still moments of sadness and uncertainty, Clara knew that their love had grown stronger, and that in the end, that was all that mattered. This version of Part 5 delves deeper into the discovery of Lawrence's past and how it impacts both him and Clara. It builds on the emotional complexity of their relationship and emphasizes Clara's growing understanding of Lawrence's true feelings, making the story even more engaging. As weeks passed, Lawrence's health continued to decline. But despite the toll it was taking on his body, something about him seemed different. Clara could sense a shift, a calmness that hadn't been there before. It was as if, with the secrets of his past finally laid bare, he had found a peace he had long been searching for. His days were quieter now, filled with moments of reflection, and more often than not, he was simply grateful to be alive, surrounded by the woman who had shown him such unexpected care and affection. One afternoon, as Clara sat by his bedside, reading one of his favorite books aloud, he motioned for her to stop. His voice, though weak, was steady as he spoke. "Clara," he said softly, his eyes fixed on her, "there's something I want to give you, something I should have given you a long time ago." Clara put the book down and took his hand in hers. She had never seen him look so vulnerable, yet there was something reassuring in his gaze, as if he had made peace with the choices he had made in life. She didn't speak. She simply waited, her heart full of questions, but also a sense of calm that came from knowing that they had come so far together. Lawrence continued, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I want to make sure you're taken care of, Clara. Not just with money or material things, but with everything you need to live a full life after I'm gone. You've given me more than I ever imagined I would have at the end of my days. Now it's my turn to give back to you." Clara's eyes welled up with tears. She had never expected anything like this from Lawrence. All she had ever wanted was his companionship, his love, and to be there for him when he needed someone. But this, his offer, was something she hadn't thought about. Lawrence had always been so self-reliant, so independent, that hearing him speak these words was both a shock and a relief. It was as if he was finally letting go of everything that had weighed him down, including his need to be the one in control. "I don't need anything from you, Lawrence," Clara said, her voice trembling. "You've already given me more than I ever expected. Just having you here with me, even for this short time, is all I need." But Lawrence smiled softly, squeezing her hand. "You're wrong, Clara. I want you to live the life you deserve. And for that, I need to make sure you're prepared. This isn't just about what I can give you in the future. It's about securing the peace of mind for both of us now. I want you to know that no matter what happens, you won't have to face it alone." He paused, gathering his strength. "I've made arrangements. There's a trust in your name, a foundation that will carry on my legacy, but it will also ensure that you have everything you need. You've shown me what true love and kindness are, and I want you to continue that journey, with or without me." Clara sat there, stunned. It wasn't the money or the wealth that shocked her, but the thought that Lawrence had planned this for her, knowing that his time was short. It made her feel even more deeply connected to him, as if his love for her was more than just in words. It was something tangible, something that would last beyond his life. For the rest of the day, the atmosphere in the house felt different. There was no sadness, no feeling of dread. It was as though, in that one conversation, Lawrence had given Clara not just his wealth, but his heart, his trust, and his belief in her ability to move forward with strength. Clara understood now that Lawrence had seen her as more than just his wife or caretaker. She was his equal, his partner. The legacy he had left behind wasn't just in financial terms, but in the love and respect they had shared, and in the promise that she would continue to live a life full of purpose. As Lawrence's condition worsened in the following days, Clara knew that their time together was running out. But she didn't fear the future anymore. She had the knowledge that no matter what happened, she would carry his love and his legacy with her, always. This version of Part 6 deepens the emotional bond between Clara and Lawrence as they confront the reality of his passing, highlighting the impact of their relationship and the love they shared. It builds toward the inevitable conclusion, but with a sense of peace and understanding that makes it engaging and touching for the reader. As the days passed, Lawrence's health deteriorated even further. Clara could see it in his tired eyes, in the way his voice had grown softer, almost fragile. She had always known this moment would come, but nothing could prepare her for the reality of it. There were times when she would sit by his bedside, her hand gently resting in his, simply watching him sleep, wishing she could turn back time and make his suffering go away. Lawrence, though weak, still tried to comfort her. He would smile faintly whenever she entered the room, and even though he could no longer do the things he once did, his presence was enough for Clara. They had shared so much over the past few months. Memories, moments, and a love that, despite the circumstances, had become real and undeniable. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Lawrence turned to Clara with a soft look in his eyes. He had something he needed to say, something that had been weighing on him for a while. "Clara," he said gently, his voice barely above a whisper, "I've lived a long life, and I've seen the world change in ways I never imagined. But you've changed me in ways I never expected. I'm grateful for every moment I've spent with you." Clara's heart tightened at his words. She could see how much effort it took for him to speak, and her love for him only grew stronger. "You've changed me too, Lawrence," she replied softly. "You showed me a different way of living, of loving, and of being. I'll always be thankful for you." He smiled, though it was clear that every breath seemed like a struggle now. "You've been the greatest gift of my life, Clara. I don't want you to feel alone when I'm gone. I've made sure you'll be okay. More than okay, actually. You'll be able to live the life you deserve. And I want you to know, from the bottom of my heart, that it's not just because of the wealth. It's because you have a strength in you that the world can't take away." Clara couldn't hold back the tears any longer. She had been strong for so long, trying to keep up appearances for both of them. But now, with Lawrence's words, she felt the weight of it all. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I know," Lawrence replied softly, "but I've lived my life the best way I knew how. And I've seen you grow into someone so incredible. I'm proud of you, Clara." His words meant more to her than anything else. He wasn't just a billionaire. He was a man who had lived with regrets, but he had also found peace in his final years. And Clara, by his side, had shown him love in a way no one else had. They had found something real together, and it was something neither of them had expected. That night, after Clara had tucked him into bed and kissed him gently on the forehead, she sat in the chair by his side, holding his hand. She knew that the end was near, but she wasn't afraid. She had learned so much from Lawrence, about love, forgiveness, and the importance of finding peace before it was too late. In the quiet of the room, she reflected on the journey they had taken together, on the love they had shared, and the future that, though uncertain, would carry the memory of him with her forever. As the night grew colder, Clara stayed by his side, watching over him with a sense of calm. She had no idea what the next day would bring, but she knew that no matter what, she would carry Lawrence's lessons with her. He had given her not just wealth, but a sense of purpose, a deep understanding of what it meant to truly love someone. And so, As Lawrence slipped into a peaceful sleep, Clara held on to the quiet knowledge that their bond, their love, would live on in her heart forever. This version of Part 7 focuses on the emotional depth of Clara and Lawrence's relationship as they face the inevitable. It reflects their love and connection while preparing for the end, with Clara coming to terms with the future, ensuring the story remains engaging and heartfelt. The morning arrived quietly, much like the others, but Clara knew this would be the day. Lawrence's breathing was slow and shallow, and his once strong frame seemed frail under the covers. Clara had sat by his side through the night, her hand holding his, not knowing how many more moments they had left together. She had grown so accustomed to his presence, to the way his gentle smile had always greeted her each morning, that it was hard to imagine a world without him. The house was eerily still as the sun began to rise, casting a soft light through the windows. Clara looked at Lawrence one last time, her heart heavy but filled with love. She had promised to be there for him, and she had kept that promise through every difficult day. Now, as she prepared to say goodbye, she realized that love wasn't about holding on forever. It was about cherishing the time they had shared. Clara gently brushed a strand of hair from Lawrence's forehead, her eyes lingering on the man who had become more than just her husband. He had become her partner, her confidant, and the person who had opened her heart to the world in ways she never imagined. She had loved him with all that she had, and now it was time for him to be at peace. As she whispered a soft goodbye to him, she felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. In these last few months, Lawrence had taught her so much. He had shown her the true meaning of love, not the kind that was based on wealth or status, but the kind that was grounded in trust, kindness, and deep emotional connection. They had shared moments that were simple but filled with meaning, like reading together, taking walks in the garden, and talking about their hopes and dreams. And in those quiet moments, they had built something beautiful, something that couldn't be taken away by time or circumstance. As Lawrence took his final breath, Clara stayed with him, her hand still holding his, feeling a deep sense of peace. She wasn't alone in this moment. Their love had transcended time, and the bond they shared would never be broken. It wasn't about the things he had given her, his wealth, his home, his legacy. It was about the way he had touched her heart and soul, and how she had done the same for him. The days that followed were filled with sadness, but also a sense of gratitude. Clara knew that Lawrence's passing didn't mark the end of their story. It marked a new chapter, one where she would carry his lessons with her, using the strength and wisdom he had given her to live a life that honored his memory. The funeral was a small, private affair. Clara had insisted on keeping it simple, just like Lawrence had wanted. The people who had truly known him, his closest friends, the few who had stood by him through thick and thin, attended, offering their condolences. But Clara felt no bitterness, no anger. Instead, she felt a quiet sense of closure. Lawrence had gone, but he had left behind a lasting legacy. A legacy of love, compassion, and strength. In the months that followed, Clara found herself moving forward in a way she had never imagined. She took the trust Lawrence had set up for her and used it to help others, just as he had intended. She donated to causes close to her heart and started a foundation to help people in need, something Lawrence would have been proud of. And in doing so, she found peace. Clara never forgot Lawrence. She carried him with her in everything she did, in the choices she made, and in the love she gave to the world. He had changed her life in ways that were impossible to explain, but she would always be thankful for the time they had together. She had loved a man who, despite his wealth, had found the greatest treasure of all, a love that was pure, real, and unbreakable. And in the end, that was the true legacy he left behind. Not the money, not the possessions, but the love that would live on forever in her heart. This version of Part 8 wraps up the story with a sense of closure and peace. It emphasizes Clara's growth, the impact of Lawrence's love on her life, and the lasting legacy of their bond, leaving the audience with a bittersweet yet hopeful ending.